Hey guys, welcome to the second episode of Sunday School at Home. I'm in the car because today's story takes place on the road to Emmaus. So think back to 2 weeks ago at Easter. That's when God won the fight against death and Jesus came back to life, remember? So last week we learned about how Thomas needed help to believe that. Thomas needed help to understand how it could be possible. And so Jesus gave him the help that he needed. This week, we're going to meet some more of Jesus' friends who are surprised by the resurrection. But first, I have a question. Have you ever gone back to school after the summer and found out that one of your friends looked really, really different? Maybe they had a different hairstyle or different clothes, or they dyed their hair purple or blue or something, right? Maybe they grew a couple inches. It happens. Sometimes it's really weird, and it feels like maybe that's a different person. If you don't see someone for a while and they look different when you see them again, it can be hard to adjust. So in your packet today, there's a story called Different But Still Here. Pause the video and read the story. So in this story, Nolan was so excited to see his mom, right? But he was a little nervous too. He knew that she would look different, but he discovered that she was still his mom. Have you ever thought about what Jesus looked like when he came back from the dead? Jesus came back to life in a body, but it was turned into a new back-to-life body. So it was Jesus' body, but it was different because a back-to-life body is different from a regular body. Nobody except the people who saw Jesus just after he came back from the dead really know what that looks like. But it's pretty cool to imagine it, right? So on that day, on the day that Jesus came back to life, on Easter, a couple of his friends were walking on the road to Emmaus. Nobody really knows where Emmaus was, but it was about 7 or 17 miles from Jerusalem. So it's kind of like walking from church to Newark or from church to Kennett Square. I bet they wish they had a car like me, right? So anyway, 2 of Jesus' friends were walking to Emmaus. One was named Cleopas, and the other doesn't have a name, so we'll just call her Gorklepop. So Cleopas and Gorklepop were talking about all the stuff that had happened that weekend with Jesus. And all of a sudden, a guy came up, a guy they had never seen. He joined them while they were walking. And he said, "What are you talking about?" And Cleopas said, "Are you the only person in the whole city who doesn't know what happened this weekend with Jesus? We were so excited about Jesus. We really thought that he was the Savior that God promised to send to Israel. But then he died." Then Cleopas said, "Some of the women in our group went to the tomb this morning and they found an empty tomb. And they found angels who told them that Jesus was alive. And some of the guys went and they also found an empty tomb. But none of us have seen Jesus." So the guy who was walking with them started to explain how the Old Testament talks about a Savior who actually does suffer and die. And a Savior who dies before he is glorified. He showed them how Jesus fulfilled all the promises in the Old Testament for a Savior. And when they finally got to Cleopas and Gorklepop's house, the guy who was walking with them was going to keep moving. But they invited him to stay for the night. If you want to find out what happens next, find the page in your packet called The Road to Emmaus, pause the video, and play the game. So whoever won the game discovered that the guy who walked all that way with them and talked with them was Jesus. All along, it was Jesus. Can you imagine how surprised they were? This is what happened. They were eating dinner, and Jesus broke bread, and suddenly, they recognized him. They found out who it was. I think it's pretty weird that they didn't know who it was. But it's kind of like what happened to Nolan. Remember? Nolan's mom looked different, but it was still her. There is a big difference, though. Nolan's mom still had her regular body. Jesus has a back-to-life body. A back-to-life body can't die, ever. And it also can do some pretty cool stuff. Remember last week when Jesus walked through a locked door to talk to Thomas? And 2 weeks ago, Mary didn't recognize Jesus until he said her name. After he was done with dinner with Cleopas and Gorklepop, he just disappeared into thin air. Jesus' body is human, but it's different. It's human because it can eat, and it can walk and it can talk and it's real. You can touch it, like Thomas touched it. But it's very different. It can do some weird, cool stuff. It's a new kind of back-to-life human. It's totally crazy, but it's true. And guess what? Someday, when God makes all things new in our world, you will also have a back-to-life body, and I will have one. So here's your assignment for this week. Imagine what crazy thing you want to be able to do with your back-to-life body. I think it would be pretty cool to walk through a wall, but I wonder what you think. Think about it. Peace be with you. Have a good week.